Hi everyone, today I'll be giving a presentation on XYZ women's clothing. My name is Ross Hammond and I am currently in the Master's of Accounting program at Gardner Webb University. I will start by giving an outline of what will be covered during this presentation. First, I will give an introduction to XYZ women's clothing with a brief history and background, followed by their current accounting information systems and internal controls that are present. Then I will review the current systems in place, then give my recommendations and a conclusion, followed by a section where I will receive feedback and questions for anybody that has some. XYZ Women's Clothing was founded by a woman who felt a need in her community to have affordable and trendy women's clothing at a price point that anybody could afford. And it's in a town that is dominated by boutiques, which the normal person cannot afford and or frequent. So this is a boutique that has found a niche in the market that has been very successful in this local area. The structure of the company is the owner, who does most of the business processes as far as bookkeeping, data entry, record keeping, and she has a personal accountant that is there to answer any questions or help through any processes that she needs help with, or is having trouble recording, or is having an issue inputting into the system she has in place, as well as she has two other laborers who are in charge of moving inventory from the warehouse where it is received and steaming the inventory, hanging it, and transporting it to the showroom floor. The current accounting systems that are used by XYZ Women's Clothing consist of a master Excel file. This Excel file consists of three tabs: a revenue tab, an expense tab, and an inventory tab. The expense tab is a chronological list of monthly expenses that are business related through the company credit card. These can be anything from meals out or client relations to gas purchases, and they're all listed chronologically and then totaled at the bottom. The inventory tab is where the purchasing price of all of the inventory is recorded in the month that it is purchased. And then a calculation is made to where she knows exactly how much to charge based off of her markup on the wholesale price as to what retail should be. And then the revenue tab consists of the report that the consignment shop where she houses her store, the point of sales system generates a listing of all of the items that were sold and deducts commissions, revenue or rent expense, and credit card purchase fees. And this spreadsheet is sorted by the accountant and given back to the owner to input into her master Excel file. The inventory management system is implemented one on that spreadsheet on the master Excel file, but also through the consignment shop where her store is located. They implement a Ricochet software, which allows the vendors in the consignment shop to input their inventory, and this system generates barcodes that all of the inventory can be tagged with. And then through systems implemented at the front counter, they're able to scan the inventory, run it through their point of sale, and generate the report that is put into the revenue tab of the master file. This is how all of the sales are done for XYZ Women's Clothing. And the other system, accounting system, which is the data storage, and in XYZ Women's Clothing's case, All of the storage is done on the main computer itself, which houses the master Excel file. All purchases that are made, the invoice, if it is mailed, is scanned into a PDF and saved in a file under the name of the vendor it was purchased from. If the invoice is sent by email, the email is saved under that same file. And whenever the inventory comes in, it is matched with the invoice. The number and the count in the box is matched with the count on the invoice. And this is reconciled with the Excel file. And after 5 years, all of these files are deleted and to make room for new files, since all of the data is stored on this computer. The internal controls of XYZ women's clothing. I personally work in public accounting, and I'm a governmental auditor, so we use the COSO framework pretty regularly in our audits. And what we look for are the 5 levels of the front of this cube here, which are control environment, risk assessment, control activities, information communication, monitoring activities. And in the case of XYZ Women's Clothing, all of these areas are addressed. There are no written policies per se, but within the processes that take place on a daily, weekly, and or monthly basis, each 5 of those categories are met. With the control environment, the owner has an incentive to make sure that the data that is represented on her record keeping is accurate, since this comes down to how she makes her money and how her livelihood is maintained. As far as risk assessment goes, the main audit or area of risk would be the data entry section. Since all data is entered manually, there would be a high risk of either inaccurate data, typos, and with the owner being the only individual in charge of data entry, there's really no backup or no check as far as making sure that the data was entered correctly. It is easy to add an extra 0 to an inventory, or put the decimal point in the wrong position and turn $100 into 10 or 1,000. These are all common mistakes, which there might not necessarily be any way to check with the way XYZ Women's Clothing currently runs their system. As far as control activities, the owner runs a daily credit card report for purchases, and these purchases are input into that expense tab of the Excel spreadsheet on a daily or weekly basis. She continually runs antivirus software on her system to ensure that it is protected from any outside sources looking to encroach on her data. Her password is reset frequently within the accounting information or the inventory management system that is implemented by the consignment shop. This is to help stop people from finding her password and messing with the inventory counts that are in the system, as well as regular updates are done to her Excel, her Microsoft suite, and her computer in general to ensure, again, privacy, security, and that all of her business processes are taken care of and safe. As far as information and communication goes, there is no formal communication channel. The owner of the XYZ Women's Clothing and the consignment shop are very friendly, and if any issues arise, they are able to communicate pretty freely and openly with each other and address any issues that have come up. Same with the accountant for XYZ Women's Clothing. It's very cordial, and if there are any questions, it is never there's never any contention in the conversation. It is always very formal and business appropriate. As far as monitoring activities, the spreadsheet is sent to the accountant on a monthly basis for him to run the monthly profit and loss report, analyze the monthly sales with previous months as well as previous years to give the owner current and up-to-date information on how the store is doing year to date, as well as month to month and day to day. All this information is generated with the information that is put into these Excel files and output from the inventory management system from the consignment shop. So in review of the current accounting information system and controls, it covers all of the important areas that XYZ women's clothing needs. It gives up-to-date revenues, it gives up-to-date expenses, it allows for projections. The current system makes it pretty easy for the owner to project her break-even point for the current month and or current year. If she has one bad month, it allows her to calculate what her sales are going to need to be in the following 2 months or 3 months and able to get back to at least breaking even and or turning a profit. The current system, as I mentioned, allows for easy comparison between historic sales numbers and historic expense data. If she overspends in 1 month, it's very visible because each month is present beside the previous, and you can tell at the bottom totals which month is a little bit longer and or higher than previous months, as well as with the sales and the inventory. All of that is right there for the owner to access very easily. And this is a system that she's been using since the inception of this boutique. She is very familiar with it. It is a system where she is able to access it on her own, input data, and feel comfortable that the data that is coming out is accurate to what she has put in. It's a system that, without much accounting background, since the owner was a fashion merchandising major that didn't take tons of accounting or business courses, is able to run on her own very easily and feel confident with. And the internal controls, each of the areas has some sort of tie with the COSO framework. And it allows for there to be a flow and some sort of level of assurance that the XYZ women's clothing is being productive and following the standards set forward. The recommendations that I would have for XYZ women's clothing, first would be to implement a solid state hard drive to where all of the information on the main computer can be backed up frequently. As it is right now, the business has had one computer over the last 2 years and 2 computers in the lifetime of the company. Luckily, when the data was transferred over, there was no corruption within the data. The files were able to move from one computer to the other without any issue. But if one day the owner spills some coffee on the keyboard and fries her hard drive and or computer chips, bye-bye files, they're all gone. And the only records that she would have would be on the inventory management system that's cloud-based at the consignment shop. And again, that would only have the current inventory counts that are at the store. It wouldn't have any historical information. It wouldn't have any waiting to be processed. It wouldn't have any inventory in transit. It would only have the current totals that are in the store, which would be devastating for the company and would be very hard to recover. I would also implement a cloud-based QuickBooks accounting software, one that could be accessed through any internet browser. And the reason I would recommend this is because the way that purchasing currently works, after the purchase is made, it is added to the files I mentioned earlier. And then the invoice is not checked again until the package arrives. If the package doesn't arrive, the owner has no idea of knowing, well, what have I spent money on and what's here. With this software, she would be able to create a purchasing account, which would allow her to keep an ongoing log of what has been purchased and what has been switched to inventory once it has come in. That way she would know purchases that have been made that she has not received the inventory, and she would be able to either cancel that purchase with the wholesaler and or cancel the payment through the card, allowing her to know exactly how much money she has tied up in inventory in transit, and any of the processes that she wouldn't have any access to now, because she would only know what has come in and that she has a record for what has come in, but not necessarily a record for all of the in-transit inventory. I would also get with the owner to develop a strategic plan going forward. The way that XYZ Women's Clothing is currently run, there is a plan to break even each month or have some sort of profits, but there isn't a 5-6 year plan on how they plan to achieve. The way it currently runs is the owner goes to market, she buys clothes that she likes, she brings them back and she sells them. There's not much planning as far as what seasons are going to be the best, how much inventory to have during which parts of the year. During her busy seasons, how is she going to make sure that she has the right amount of inventory to keep track with the sales for those months, so her inventory isn't depleted and people don't show up and there are bare racks. And then in months where her sales have been historically less, she has too much inventory coming in and she has too much of her expense tied up in inventory that's sitting as opposed to inventory that's turning. And finally, I would implement a formal list of internal controls. This list would allow her to have a checklist of what has been entered into the computer, when it's entered into the computer, how it's entered into the computer, so that daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, she can go down this checklist and make sure and have an extra level of confidence that everything has been entered properly. And also, if she ever decides to bring in additional help, having this formal list of internal controls will make training easier. It will allow there to be a trail of how the process, how everything flows through XYZ Women's Clothing, and would be easier to express as opposed to just getting in there and doing it. In conclusion, I think the current accounting system is sufficient for the needs of the owner. It ticks off all the boxes she needs. She's looking for what are her year-to-date sales, what's her revenue for the year, what are her expenses, is there a difference in that, what's her current inventory spent, how much does she have out in inventory. And the system that's currently in place allows for these calculations to be done and this information to be accessed, but it doesn't allow for much outside of that. And that's an area that definitely can be improved upon. Again, all of the recommendations that I've set forward are ones that will allow the company to grow. It will hopefully future-proof the company, help her to move more from paper in some instances to having an electronic file, as well as allowing her systems to flow more fluidly through the processes. And again, anything that's implemented will allow for growth within the company. The system that's currently in place, if she gets to a certain point in sales, it will be very hard to keep track of all the different facets that are going into it. Implementing these online softwares and these different storage solutions will provide the boutique with the ability to have larger files, have these files sorted through much quicker, have these files allow them to be accessed much quicker. And again, having the list of internal controls will allow for the business processes to be learned very easily for individuals who are coming in, and or if the owner decides to pass this company along in the future. So the new owner or the new worker would not just be a blind squirrel trying to figure out how to get through these processes. They will be allowed to, there'll be a way for them to like step by step go through and figure out exactly how things are input, how things are processed, and how things are sold ultimately to generate revenue. And I've always heard better record keeping makes for a better business, and all of these recommendations will allow for better record keeping, a better trail. If heaven forbid there's ever an IRS audit, this would allow for the owner to have much better records and allow her to cover her back more than anything else. So again, I would love any feedback or questions from anybody that has viewed this. I know I'll be submitting this as well, and it'll be on YouTube, but questions and feedback are much appreciated, and I look forward to responding to all of them. And finally, I would just like to thank everybody for listening to this presentation, and I hope that you enjoyed it, and thanks again.